What's going on, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome back to a brand new video. I wanted to talk about some of the newer Endymion cards that have just been sort of announced coming out in this structure deck. I've actually played against this stuff on Yugioh Pro on stream quite a bit, and I'm actually pretty impressed with how the deck operates. Playing a lot of the Mythical Beast stuff along with some of the Endymion stuff. It was actually pretty good from what I saw and was able to play against. The deck can actually put up a really good fight and seems like a pretty strong deck going forward. Another thing that's really interesting is that this is like one of the first decks I ever uploaded on my channel was an Endymion spell counter deck that actually was my brother's deck, and it's just a deck that Endymion spell counter decks have been something that been sort of near and dear, if you will, familiar. I remember playing the old school Endymion with all the spells and spell power grasp and all that stuff, and the field spell. It was a really awesome deck to play back then. It's a throwback to see all this stuff popping up about Endymion again. But apparently in this structure deck here that will be coming out sometime soon, it says here Endymion is an archetype now, which is super cool to see because it's definitely a really cool archetype. The whole spell counter thing is obviously, it's been done before, but I think it's really cool to see how it's incorporated in here. This card right here is insane. I don't know if you've ever seen what it does, but it's insane. But yeah, they've got a couple new cards that have been revealed or leaked or whatever. So we have the first one here is Empress of Endymion, which is a level 7 light spellcaster pendulum effect monster. And it's interesting that they're all being made in pendulums, which I guess makes sense because if you play them in the scale, that gives you a spell counter, so it's counterproductive, or it's productive for what the archetype is trying to do. So it's a level 7 light spellcaster pendulum effect with 1850 attack and 2700 defense. 1850 attack. That is annoying. I wish they would stop doing that with cards, is making them 850. That's just kind of annoying to do the math. Math is hard enough as is. Why make it even more difficult? No, I'm just kidding. So Pendulum Scale 2. Each time a spell card is activated, you place a spell counter on this card when that card resolves, and then you can remove 3 spell counters from this card. Cost special summon both this card from your hand, from your Pendulum Zone, and 1 monster from your hand that you can place a spell counter on. And if you do, place 1 spell counter on each of those 2 monsters. So that's really, really good. It just summons itself out of the scale. If you've got 3 or more spell counters, which I imagine in the deck filled with a bunch of spells and pendulum monsters, that's going to be pretty easy to do. And it just says summon 1 monster from your hand that can have spell counters on it. That's a lot of cards to work with, especially when we get going down here into the list of the other cards that are posted on here in the org. Then the other effect is it's monster effect. So that was just this pendulum effect. We got a monster effect now too. You can special summon Empress. You can special summon Empress of Endymion or Endymions only once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can target 1 card you control with a spell counter and 1 card your opponent controls. Return both of those targets to the hand, even if the first target no longer has any spell counters. Then place onto this card the spell counters that were on the card returned from your hand to the field, or from your field to the hand. Okay. When this card with a spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add an Endymion card from your deck to your hand. So when it dies, you get a search. I guess in most cases, it's probably going to have a spell counter on it. I think there's 1 card in existence or something that does, it's like a trap that says when you activate it, it removes all spell counters from every card on the field. So I guess if this deck ever sort of became really popular, there's a definite counter to it. But I feel like it wouldn't be that difficult for the deck to overcome, because you can just start replenishing spell counters in the next turn. It's not like you can't ever have spell counters or anything after it's played. But yeah, you get the point. Then we have Magister of Endymion, level 3 Earth Spellcaster Pendulum Effect Monster, 1500 attack and 900 defense. It's a scale 8. This is a scale 2. Pendulum effects. Each time a spell card is activated, place a spell counter on this card when that card resolves. So that seems like it's going to be standard for a lot of these. You can remove 3 spell counters from this card. Special summon both this card from your Pendulum Zone and 1 monster from your face-up extra deck that you can place a spell counter on. If you do, place 1 spell counter on each of those 2 monsters. Monster effect. So similar, Magister is similar to Empress. It's that Empress summons 1 from hand, and this one summons 1 from the face-up extra deck, which is interesting. So lots of just special summoning power here. Then the monster effect is you can special summon Magister of Endymions only once per turn. I'm used to it being like you can only special summon this card once per turn. So after you summon it that way, you're pretty much done special summoning these cards, which is a nice restriction. It probably slows the deck down a little bit. Nice fair balance, I would say. When this card declares an attack, you can place 1 spell counter on this card. Once per opponent's turn, quick effect, you can remove 3 spell counters from your field. Special summon 1 monster from your deck that you can place spell counter that you can place a spell counter on. That's during your opponent's turn. You could summon out Endymion, the original Endymion, during your opponent's turn. I'm not quite exactly sure what his effect is, but that's not too bad. That's a pretty decent effect to have, especially if there's something you can summon out of your deck that you can put spell counters on. And there is, which is Mythical Beast Jackal King. I believe he can negate monster effects if he has a couple spell counters on him. But yeah, it says remove 3 spell counters from your field, special summon 1 monster from your deck that you can place a spell counter. So it can get summoned out from the deck, but it won't have any counters on it unless there's some sort of way to put counters on other cards. I guess with some of these other cards there might be. If this card in a monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone, then place spell counters on this card equal to the spell counters that were on it. You can place this card in your Pendulum Zone, then spell... Okay. So if it's destroyed, it just goes back to the Pendulum Zone, and it gets the spell counters that it had on it when it was a monster. So that's pretty interesting to see. Okay, not too bad, not too bad. Then we have Servant of Endymion, level 3 wind spellcaster. So we have a level 3, another level 3, and a level 7. So, and they're all different attributes. Yeah, we have light, earth, and wind here for the Servant. Level 3 wind spellcaster, pendulum effect. Scale 2, 915 pendulum effects. Each time a spell card is activated, you get the 1 counter. Okay. You can remove 3 spell counters from this card, special summon both this card from your Pendulum Zone and 1 monster from your deck with 1,000 or more attack that you can place a spell counter on. And if you do, place 1 spell counter on each of those 2 monsters. That is really good. This gets Mythical Beast Cypress, Jackal King, other Mythical Beast cards that are all Pendulum monsters that fit right into this. I think Mythical Beast Endymion is going to be like a really powerful deck. It might be a decent rogue deck or a budget deck to pick up. That's going to be really fun to play. I definitely plan to pick this up because I think it'll have a lot of utility, and it'll definitely be a fun, interesting deck to play. And it's because I used to, play this deck years ago. My brother used to play this deck years ago, so it's definitely a throwback to see the Endymion stuff making a comeback here in 2019. Definitely looking forward to getting my hands on these cards because it just looks like a lot of fun to play. I already enjoy playing the Mythical Beast engine enough in spellbooks, so being able to play it in a different deck that is entirely based on Endymion and spell counters on this stuff, it seems very, very cool. And the fact that it is all pendulum based too is even better because pendulum summoning isn't broken, right? But then we have the other effect is you can remove 3 spell counters from this card, especially both this card from your Pendulum Zone. And, oh yeah, we already read that. So that's the monster effect. And keep in mind, when they get summoned from the deck, too, you place a spell counter on each of them. So your Jackal King, your Cerberus is already coming out with a counter on it, which is a good place to start because when that card has 4 counters, you can banish a monster your opponent controls that gains that attack to the end of the next turn. And then, obviously, you guys know what Jackal King does. He can negate a monster effect by, I believe, removing 2 or 3 counters. I'm not entirely sure. Then we have its other effect, its monster effect. This card can attack directly while it has spell counters on it, which isn't too big of a deal because it only has 900 attack, so that's not too big of a threat. Sort of like a Gaga Cowboy, maybe with that low attack stats. Something you might now want to get dropped on you late game because that could just seal the deal right then and there. Once per turn, or once per opponent's turn, quick effect, you can discard 1 card. That's cost, then place 1 spell counter on this card and all other cards you control that can place a spell counter on. Okay. So, potentially having this card on your field with this card could be pretty good. Once per, yeah, you can discard a card, place 1 spell counter on this card and all other cards you control. What was the one that said it summoned during the opponent's turn? Yeah, during the opponent's turn, remove a spell counter on this card, special summon 1 monster from your deck that you can place a spell counter on. So you could summon out Jackal off of this guy by removing the counter, just summon out Jackal, and then discard a card to place counters basically on everything on your field. That would load it up a little bit. I'm assuming... Yeah, I don't think the Jackal King you would summon out off of this would get the counters from this being activated because I don't think it'd be on the field at the right time. I'm just trying to think of like a synergy of being able to like drop a Jackal King on your opponent during their turn, which isn't like a big threat. It's one monster negation. For a lot of decks, that isn't going to be a big problem unless they open up really bad, which they're just going to lose anyways to all these like free special summons and plays they're going to be making during your turn. But then we have, if this card in a monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone, then place spell counters on this card equal to the spell counters that were on it. So a similar effect to the Magister of Endymion. Then we have some spell cards, which is really nice to see. This looks like a beefier Spell Power Grasp. Which I believe Spell Power Grasp that just like place a spell counter on one card you control. Obviously, you get this addition. You get the counter for the card being played, and then you would get the counter for the effect of the card. So, but this one seems maybe a little bit better. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. So it's a hard once per turn. Add an Endymion card from your deck to your hand. Then place as many spell counters as possible on cards you control that you can place a spell counter or counters on, but not more spell counters than the total number of spell power grasps and spell power controls in your graveyard and in your field. So if you already played spell power grasp that turn, you get to add a card, and then you'd place 2 counters on everything, because, well, technically it would be 3 because you're activating this card. Then let's say you have a spell power and grasp and grave, so that would count there. And then this would technically also be on your field, so that's dropping 3 counters onto everything, just like that. Minimum 2, and it grabs you a search of any Endymion card, so that's Servant, Magister, or the Empress. Or this guy in the box here, which I believe Endymion is his name. This guy, I think he like specializes himself from the Pendulum Zone by removing 2 spell counters, or 6 spell counters, I believe, and then he gets to blow up 2 cards in the field, which is just nuts. I had a board of Mermail from Mermail's that I had set up, which was Yugioh's VFD, and I believe he baited the Yugioh, but was still able to out the VFD Yugioh with this card, because the effect to summon this card out doesn't activate on field, and it's not a monster in the Pendulum Zone either, so it's a spell card, so it outs Yugioh and VFD, which is incredible. That's how it worked on Yugioh Pro anyways, at least, which is, again, it can out VFD. That's a pretty good card. Not a lot of monsters out there are outing VFD with that little effort. But then we have the Endymion Lab, which is a continuous spell. You can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. This card's name becomes the Magical Citadel of Endymion while it is in the spell and trap zone. That's really good. Each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card when that card resolves. Once per turn, if a spellcaster mounted control is destroyed by battle, after damage calculation, you can remove 6 spell counters from your field. Special summon 1 level 7 or high spellcaster from your hand or deck. Wow. That is just 1 level 7 or higher spellcaster from your hand or deck. So this can summon a lot of things. Dark Magician of Chaos, High Priestess, World of Prophecy. That is, I believe, World of Prophecy. I'm not sure if it has some sort of special restriction. But this is a really good card. It becomes Magical Citadel of Endymion, which helps you establish your field. So you can potentially play 6 to 7 copies of Magical Citadel, because terraforming at 2 and then the 3 Citadels. This is a fantastic card. Each time a spell card is activated, you place a spell counter on this card when that card resolves. And then once per turn, if a spellcaster monster controls destroy the battle, after damage calculation, you can remove 6 spell counters from your field. So that could be off any of your monsters, a field spell, or this card. And then you just summon a free level 7 or higher spellcaster from your hand or deck. That is really good. And this has, I forget what this monster is on here. I'm drawing a blank, but this monster, I can't remember its name. I used to play it in an old Endymion deck. It was one of the cards that you could just place counters on it a lot. Nice to see that cool artwork there. Then we have the Guidance of Spell Salvation. Normal spell, you can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. Target a spellcaster effect monster in your graveyard, add that monster to your hand. So this one doesn't seem that great. Obviously, it's just a free spell to play to add back cards. If one of these pendulum cards do happen to hit your graveyard, they're not able to go back to your extra monster zone via Solemn Strike or whatever it might be. You can just use this to recur them back, or any other cards you need to get back to make any sort of plays. I know a lot of people are thinking like, this could, Endymion spellbooks could be a thing, but The Mythical Beast stuff I've seen has worked really well with this. At least I don't know if that was with these cards in it, because I believe the only Endymion card they had to work with was this guy here on the cover. So I think going forward on stream, if I run into this deck again or even try to build it and play it and see how it works with spellbooks or pure with just like Mythical Beast stuff like Gerudo, Cerberus, and Jackal King, tons of potential there. Then some cools. March 9th release, that's when it comes out. That's actually not that far away. I don't know if that's in the OCG. Nope, that's in the OCG. 350 yen each pack. Or maybe that's for the sleeves? I'm not sure. I'm really excited for this to come out, though. Again, Endymion is something that's sort of like nostalgic for me. It's like a deck that I remember playing and my brother playing like 4+ years ago at this time. Incredible to see that getting some support and it actually being like really, really good. Then we have the witchcraft stuff. Another thing I want to talk about in this video. I was going to do this for like a featured archetype, but I've been seeing a lot of people say some pretty bad things about this this archetype, and you know, some like synergy possibly with spellbooks, but like spellbooks are spellbooks. I feel like there's not a whole lot of stuff you can throw into that deck. And again, just because they're all spellcasters, there's not always a ton of synergy. I think this stuff has more synergy with spellbooks than this stuff does, but then again, I haven't really read too much of this stuff, so we'll go ahead and do that now. So yeah, the witchcraft strategy is revealed. The Pittore, level 3 water, searchable off Pike. No, that doesn't really matter, but figured I'd point it out. During either player's main phase, you contribute this card, discard a spell card from your hand, special one witchcraft monster from your deck except itself. Banish this card from your graveyard, draw a card, then send a witchcraft card from your hand to the graveyard. Or if you don't have any in your hand, banish your entire hand. Oh my god, okay, so this is like a Allure of Darkness, but in monster form. Card seems pretty decent. Then we have level 5 light spellcaster effect of Witchcrafter Adele. You can only use this each effect of this card's name once per turn. So quick effect, discard a spell card, especially when one witchcraft monster from your hand except itself. Tribute this card, then target one spellcaster monster in your graveyard except itself, and special summon that monster. So some pretty decent effects there to recur other monsters from the grave. But it's a level 5, so you're not getting this on your field via normal summon. That'd be a little better if it was a level 4. I believe one other thing I've seen people mention with this deck is the restrictions that a lot of this stuff has, which is good. I like to see restrictions on stuff, but certain archetypes that you know aren't going to be really tier 1 that get restricted to death make them just like never really going to see the light of day in, you know, competitive play because they drop all these restrictions on it. I've seen it with tons of archetypes before, which is kind of sad to see because some of these decks are really cool. A lot of people really seem to like them and then they invest into them and they're just not what they thought they would be. It's like only if this card could do this thing, or only if this card could do this thing, or one little extra piece sometimes is all it needs just to be a little bit better. Not broken, but just a little bit better, you know, more fun to play overall. Yeah, this card's got some pretty decent effects, but it is a level 5, so unless there's some other cards on here that is special one from your deck for free or whatever, then it's going to seem pretty mediocre. Again, I haven't seen this deck played in action. There could be an easy way to get it out there, but during the main phase, you can discard a... Well, yeah, I'm dumb. So during the play's main phase, you can tribute this card, discard a spell card from your hand, special summon a witchcraft monster from your deck except itself. So that would just tutor out this. I'm actually just blind and dumb. I apologize. I literally just read this card. So this could tutor out this, but then you're discarding a spell here, and you're discarding a spell here, just to even like get some extra monsters on board. For it doesn't even seem like that much benefit. At least that's what I'm getting here. So you could like tribute this, discard, summon this, then tribute this, and then summon another spellcaster in your grave, which I guess could be this. So maybe just summon climbs. You're going for the 3, the 5, and then the 7. Speaking of the 7, this is Witchcraft Hain, or Hieni, or whatever. Level 7 Dark Spellcaster effect. You can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. So other spellcaster monsters you control cannot be targeted by your opponent's effects. Other spellcaster monsters you control cannot be targeted by your opponent's effects. So that's really good. We'd like to see it maybe protect the whole field, but I guess if this one being the card they have to target, that's not too big of a deal. Protects everything else, sort of like Cypress Quantum Dragon. Not too bad, but not great, right? Quick effect, you can discard one spell card from your hand, then target one face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it. So this deck just likes to throw all of its spells in his hand in the graveyard. I hope a lot of these have some graveyard utility. So like I said, you could summon climb sort of into this, into this, into this if it's in your grave, or you could just go from this right to this one, because this one seems pretty decent. It just gives you an interruption, if you will, which is important to sort of have. Then we have here Witchcraft Creation, a normal spell card. Add a Witchcraft monster from your deck to your hand during your end phase. If you control a Witchcraft monster while this card is in your graveyard, add this card to your hand. You can only use one effect. So it would have been pretty nice to see you be able to use both maybe in the same turn and this be one of the most powerful cards in the deck. Because like I said, it looks like you're discarding a ton of spells. So putting this in the grave, it does have some graveyard utility, but just not what you'd want to see, not the most optimal. You get to add it back essentially during the next turn, which if those cards are even still on your field, is another question. This might just sit in your graveyard unusable and no way to get it back, unless you're playing like Magical Stone Excavation or whatever, which maybe you would play in the deck. I don't know, because like I said, you're discarding a lot of spells here so far. Then we have Witchcraft Sabotage, a normal spell. It says you can only use one effect of this card's name per turn, and only once that turn, target Witchcraft monster graveyard, cost, special on that monster. During your end phase, if you control a Witchcraft monster while this card in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. And again, those are hard once per turns for both of those effects. So if your cards can stick to your field and maybe you have a discard heavy turn, you get some of these card backs during the next turn, but then you can't play them. And then you're using them to discard, and then you're never using them to like what their actual effects are. So it's a Monster Reborn, but if you need to discard this, it's not a Monster Reborn, right? It's just being discarded, you know, to summon the Monster Reborn one or whatever, one that tributes to someone went out from deck. Then we have Witchcraft Collaboration, normal spell card. You can use this. Only use one effect of this card's name per turn, and only once that turn. Target Witchcraft monster control during this turn. That monster can attack twice during each battle phase. Also, if that monster attacks, you're pulling out any spells or traps until the end of the damage step. That's pretty good. During your end phase, if you control a Witchcraft, so they just add it back if you control a Witchcraft monster during the end phase, if you didn't already use its other effects. So during the end phase, you get to add a lot of cards back if you don't use any of these, but granted, you're not going to be using the spells, and some of them have some decent effects. So it's nice. You get to end phase replenish your hand if you don't use some of these cards. That's pretty cool. But again, could just be a lot better, but it's definitely doable. I was thinking they wouldn't be able to get added back, but yes, they said get added to your... No, yeah, it says during your end phase. Okay, that's the first thing it says, during your end phase. That's pretty good, actually. So you get to replenish your hand with a bunch of stuff during the end phase, but they're not like stuff you can have set to interrupt your opponent, and which isn't too big of a deal. That this deck's playstyle might not be revolved 100% around that. I don't know. But it seems pretty good. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, like I said, it could be better. During your end phase, just get add them back. That's not too bad. Because I would have liked to see, you know, some graveyard activations or manipulations with the spell cards. Because you're discarding a spell here, you're discarding a spell here, you're discarding a spell here, and then these all can add themselves back, which is nice. Then we have the quick play spell, Witchcraft Draping. You can only use one effect of this card's name per turn, and only one step turn. Target spell traps your opponent controls up to them with Witchcraft monster control, return those to the hand. And then during your end phase, if you control a Witchcraft monster while this card's in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. Okay, so yeah, earlier I said like if your monsters stick to the field to be able to add them back. I just literally forgot they say during your end phase. I didn't even realize that. During your end phase, you can add them back. So if they can survive till the end phase, which I would hope they would be able to, you get to add back some cards, and a lot of them potentially, if you have a really discard heavy turn. Then we have Witchcraft By Street, continuous spell card. Each turn, same effect that applies to the other ones, except for the first effect here. Each turn, the first time each of your Witchcraft monsters would be destroyed by battle or card effects, they are not destroyed. Then the other effects here we have, if you would discard from the hand to activate effect of a Witchcraft monster you control, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. That's okay. That just seems kind of counterintuitive. Like, wouldn't you just discard this card instead of just, because you have to play this? I don't know. This card doesn't seem that great. Doesn't seem that great at all, unless I'm missing something. Then during your end phase, you get to add it back if you have, or no, you get to place it in your spell and trap zone face up. Okay, that's a little different. I was gonna say, if it just adds it back to the hand, like, what's the point of even, like, playing it instead? Because you're minusing a spell out of your hand to not even be able to use this card's effect. But that's nice, but again, it's like the same sort of cost, if you will. But the fact that it places it back on the field is nice, so that makes up for that. Then we have the Witchcraft Scroll. Another continuous spell. Once per turn, when a spellcaster monster you control destroys a monster by battle, you can draw a card. And that is not, or no, it is a once per turn. But it's not a hard once per turn, so if you had multiple copies of these, you could possibly draw multiple cards. Because it didn't say you can only use this effect of Witchcraft Scroll once per turn. And then it says if you would discard from the hand, activate a Witchcraft monster control, send this card to the graveyard instead. And then you can play it in your spell trap zone face up, so that's pretty nice. And then we have the Witchcraft Masterpiece, the only trap card here revealed for the Witchcraft stuff, and it says you can only use each of the effect of this card's name once per turn. You control a Witchcraft monster, target one spell in either graveyard, add one card with the same name as that card from your deck to your hand. You can banish this card and any number of spells from your graveyard, especially from your deck. One Witchcraft monster with a level equal to the number of spells banished. This effect cannot be activated during the turn it was sent to the graveyard. Alright, so this card seems a little rough, especially that second effect. Banish a lot of your spells. And I didn't see any way to get back banished spells with this deck, which could be a problem because you would run out of resources really fast. You wouldn't be able to add these cards back during your end phase, and you discarded them without using their effects. Yeah, that just seems a little weird. I don't know. So that second effect seems like okay, maybe. Maybe you'd follow up for some extra damage to go into like this one to like swing in for extra damage during your battle phase or whatever for an extra 24. Obviously the turn that it wasn't sent. That says if you control a Witchcraft monster, target one spell in either graveyard. Add one card with the same name as that card from your deck to your hand. So this could search out Monster Reborn, Raigeki 1-for-1, Kaiju Slumber, all that stuff. So a lot of, basic generic spells that either deck you might be playing against, or in the mirror match. So you could just add one of your Witchcraft cards if they have it in their graveyard as well. And then they have a suggested deck list here, which I won't go through. If you want to check it out yourself, you can. But yeah, that's going to be it for the this little video here I wanted to make talking about the Lord of Magicians structure deck and the new Witchcraft stuff. I'm really excited for this Endymion stuff. Not so much the Witchcraft stuff. It is cool. Some people may be really interested in stuff. Personally, I'm not. Like I said, though, it is cool. It does seem like it might have some potential when we get more cards. We don't know. These are the only cards we've seen. But this Endymion stuff, man, it looks cool. I'm definitely hyped to play this deck as soon as it releases. And I don't know if this release date here is down for the OCG or if this is for the sleeves. I don't know. Maybe one of you guys can tell me in the comments. That would be super cool. Thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed. As always, Witchcraft, signing out. We'll see you in the next one.